Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, and your chancellor of cheerfulness. I can't say chancellor of cheerfulness, but I can say your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am here, robcasting at you. Robcasting at you, imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity. This is Robservations, the show about something. Robservations number 445. I don't know what that means, but every day the numbers just rise. Soon we're going to be at 500 shows, and what am I going to do then? Do a 500-minute show? Is that even possible? Can that be done? I guess it could be done. I think it'd be kind of fun to see if I could do that. I don't know, but we're still a little ways off because we have today to deal with. And you know what today is? Today is the very special day in a young man's life. You've never heard of him, but he is a budding imagination connoisseur, and his name is Aidan Wallace. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. That is Aidan Wallace. He's an imagination connoisseur, and if you had any doubt, come on. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, look at that. Aidan Wallace is 9 years old today. 9 years old. That's the same amount of times that Ferris Bueller was absent from school. 9 times, according to Ed Rooney. So we should all take this time and wish this handsome young man a very happy birthday on his 9th birthday. And Aidan, you, sir, have a package headed your way that I think you will enjoy. So happy birthday to you and many more. Have a good birthday, kid. And remember, wherever you go, there you are. All right, so that was Aidan's birthday, and that's pretty cool. It's always good to have birthdays. And by the way, don't think I'm going to call out your birthday on the show. Only very special kids named Aidan Wallace get their birthdays called out on the show, and that only happens once, one time. That's now. That's now. Although, you know, I guess I could be bribed. Aidan didn't bribe me, but, you know, I can't make birthday shout-outs a thing. Aidan, special case. He's the son I never had. What can you say? Okay, so I'll tell you what you can't say. As many people know on this show, there's something going on that I don't understand in the world today. Maybe it's in America only, everywhere else. I don't know. And there's this idea that if there's something that you don't like, or that something makes you feel uncomfortable or uneasy or whatever, then that thing should go away. And I don't understand that. I didn't grow up in that world. I don't know where that world came from. I've always thought that the universe was indifferent and that any moment there could be a giant solar flare like in the end of Knowing, Alex Proyas's Knowing, that we wouldn't know anything about. That's just going to be ejected from the sun and it will fry the planet to a crisp. At any moment, we could have an Armageddon-like asteroid, chunks of it, they'll hit Paris first and then destroy us. I just don't understand where this idea came that the universe or the world is supposed to be someplace that's nice and palatable. I mean, what have human beings proven for the last, how many hundreds of thousands of years? Well, not that many. Thousands of years, hundreds of years. We're just no damn good, just like Lex Luthor's father told him. And I just don't get this idea that everybody wants to live in a world where everything is comfortable all the time and that we're never exposed to ideas or things that are only palatable to us, that we're not offended by. And I've said on the show many times that one day someone's going to come after me. They're going to come after my Amazon buy list, and they're going to look at all whatever they deem offensive, whether it's books I've bought or movies I've watched, or people are going to tell me something is problematic. Well, here's the thing. Ideas and art and all of those things that we see, things that, hey, might be offensive. And have we not learned anything from the 20th century? Hitler tried to get rid of a lot of degenerate art. I mean, we had a Hays Code in America where we couldn't talk about certain things. I mean, couples couldn't be shown on screen unless they had separate beds in their rooms, even though we all had to come from somewhere, right? Or this idea that people are schmucks. You know, we've been treating each other terribly for a very long time. and that we have, a spotty history. The 20th century itself, not a real great track record of humanity all across the planet, treating each other, with the kind of respect we all deserve. Travel the world, man. Not a good record. Not a good human record. So this idea that we can't deal with this stuff, that we can't have problematic things, that we want to somehow scrub the idea that mankind has treated one another really shittily since the dawn of time. This idea that we want to, I don't know what, like we're going to get rid of all the icons or all the things that make us realize that we're terrible or that might offend us now. It's bizarre to me. The whole point is when you experience problematic art or you experience something that pushes your buttons or that you find offensive, the whole point is that hopefully that these things from a bygone era will teach us all, let's not be that way. Why don't we not do that anymore? A lot of people called Stanley Kubrick, my favorite film director, misanthropic. That his films, showed that he had a hatred of mankind or something. He was always making movies about, cads, Humbert, Lolita, Dr. Strangelove, pretty much as an entire indictment of, our entire military and political system. Clockwork Orange makes an anti-hero out of a rapist murderer. Barry Lyndon's a cad. Jack Nicholson wants to chop his wife up with an axe. Private Pile shot himself in the head going nuts in basic training in Full Metal Jacket. And according to Eyes Wide Shut, the rich just have sex orgies and weird costumes. You'd think that maybe he just doesn't like people. I disagree. I think Stanley Kubrick began his artistic career not just hustling chess in the park, but he became a documentary photographer for Look magazine. And if anything, he captured the vibrant life of the city of New York. Took pictures of all kinds of people, whether it was jazz musicians or fighters. I think Stanley Kubrick loved mankind with all of our, or now I don't want to offend anyone, humankind. I think he loved people. I think he loved what we were capable of. I think he loved what he thought we were going to be able to do in the future, except he was attracted to stories where we were, shits to one another. And the folly of man, the folly of humankind. And the reason he was attracted to those stories is because those stories are inherently interesting. But through telling the stories of Clockwork Orange, of Barry Lyndon, of The Shining, of Full Metal Jacket, of Lolita, of Dr. Strangelove, he was trying to tell us, don't be like that. Do better. Do better. And that's why, his stories, anti-heroes, bad guys, bad people, bad girls, they're interesting. And that's how we learn. Let's not be that way. Let's do better. Now, if we were going to get rid of all the stories that we found problematic, I think many of the stories that we've had would go away. What stories are we supposed to tell that are safe for anyone? I don't know. Do I want to see those stories? Do you want to see those stories? We already lived through that world where we had the Hays Code, where we were told what we could and couldn't say, what we could and couldn't put in movies. As I say, the universe isn't different. It does not matter. It does not care about your suffering. At any one moment, a flare could come and eliminate all life on Earth. Does that mean we shouldn't be nice to people? Does that mean we should not evolve as people? No, because who knows when that's going to happen? One day, I'll tell you, one day, there are two inevitabilities in the universe. Our sun will one day burn out and entropy will destroy everything, and you're going to die. There's more inevitabilities, but those are some. So, why not spend the rest of your life enjoying the time you have here? Because you are, in fact, a thermodynamic miracle. We learned that from Dr. Manhattan and the Watchmen. Every single person, you're unique. In the infinitude of creation, there's only one of you, just one. How amazing is that? It's amazing. So, Shouldn't we be doing the best we can to further our own lives, get better, do better, be better people? And I don't think erasing our past, erasing the folly of human existence is going to help us. But anyway, nowadays, I guess that's the fashionable thing. I'm offended by this, so you must go away, or these things must go away, as if they're not going to like still be here. They're still here. I mean, I don't know anyway. But so yesterday, I tweeted about this. I read this article. It was the biggest article on Variety, and I couldn't believe it. I thought this article was one of the dumber articles. There's no such thing as funner. Is there something? I know there's dumber. Can you say dumber in a sentence? It's most fun. Most dumb. This was one of the most dumb. That's wrong, too. It was an article that was in Variety, and I've got to share it. If you haven't seen it already, let me share it with you. 10 problematic films that could use warning labels. By Tim Gray, published yesterday in Variety at 5 o'clock Pacific time. It's now widely accepted that despite being a beloved classic, Gone with the Wind needs an explanation of its context when it's screened on TV or in theaters. Well, it hasn't needed one for 80 years, but okay, we're going to put one on now. I get it. And I have no problem with somebody contextualizing Gone with the Wind. But I do think that contextualizing it for this day and age is one thing. I mean, will it be in 50 years? Will it still need to be contextualized? I don't know. But for the time being, I think, okay. I don't think it should be edited, and I don't think it should be removed from existence, because it's not like it didn't exist. Erasing history is terrifying to me. But anyway, HBO Max says it will eventually restore the Oscar-winning film to the service, but with context and framing. It's a start, but Hollywood's vaults are filled with movies that could benefit from an explainer or disclaimer about outdated depictions of race, sexuality, disabilities, and more. Really? And who's going to decide that? Who's going to decide what movies should have an explainer or disclaimer about outdated depictions of race, sexuality, disabilities, and more? I thought, as a human being, as an adult male now, I thought it was my job to learn all I can learn and learn about these things. That's what our educational system's for. That's what living is for. I don't think I'm necessarily qualified to offer disclaimers on things and art that was created in the past, unless I was alive that particular time, able to be aware of what was going on. Like, if you were to ask me what it was like to participate in the civil rights era of the 1960s, I couldn't tell you. I didn't exist. So, I want to know who is going to decide where these disclaimers are coming from and which films would need them. Who's going to be, is somebody who's like 20 years old and in college offended by a certain depiction of something that was made 80 years ago? Are they qualified to tell me what needs a disclaimer? They weren't alive then when it was made, so they have no context. I mean, they have a context now, I understand. They might feel bad about something. They might have trauma in their own life that leads them to think that no depictions of that trauma that affects them should ever be seen ever again by anybody ever. I don't know. So who? But anyway, let me go on. The films most often cited as racist, of course, are Birth of a Nation and Song of the South. But the range of problematic films is wide, including Breakfast at Tiffany's. Mickey Rooney's stereotype role as a Japanese man is appalling. West Side Story. Puerto Ricans are shown almost only as gang members. Okay. First of all, West Side Story is actually about two rival gangs that are based on the Montagues and the Capulets from Romeo and Juliet. Now, I'm not really sure, but when you're reading Romeo and Juliet, is there anybody else in the story who aren't Montagues and Capulets or surrounding those two families in fair Verona? I think West Side Story is actually about the racial tension of the time. So, white people are either shown as brutish cops or gang members too. But anyway, A 1975 slave owner drama, Mandingo, jaw-dropping and apparently aimed at the KKK demographic. I don't know about that, Tim, but, okay. All films that I wouldn't have called West Side Story problematic. Breakfast at Tiffany's is well known as having a very racist caricature. But, when you watch these things, shouldn't you be like, why don't we not do that anymore? I think even Mickey Rooney probably would tell you that he probably shouldn't have played that part. But anyway, all films should be viewed with a critical eye, but that doesn't mean banning them. These films represent the era in which they're made, and it's important to remember history and human bigotry and insensitivity so that we don't repeat these things. Oh, do I agree with you there, sir. As a start, here are 10 films that need to be presented with disclaimers and discussions before and after screening. Tim, you don't speak for me there, buddy. I don't need disclaimers and discussions before and after a screening. I am a discerning, educated adult. I don't need somebody to come in and tell me anything about the movie I'm about to see because I can make up my own mind. That's what being adulting is all about. That's what doing an adulting things. Being an adult and adulting. And I don't need somebody younger than me to tell me with disclaimers and discussions what I should think of a film that I've been watching throughout my life. I don't. Just like I wouldn't presume to tell them. Remember, I wouldn't expect anyone to trust me because I'm over 30. Remember those days? Dirty Harry, 1971. Lieutenant Harry Callahan of the San Francisco Police Department is determined to uphold the law, even if he has to break the rules. It started a craze for movies about maverick cops who get the job done by following their instincts rather than the law. The film mocks liberal judges and do-gooders, and the villain claims police brutality, planting the seed that other such charges are fake and moves to get sympathy. The movie's about a lot more than just those things. And the crime in the 70s and what was going on in the inner cities in America was different back then. Also, remember the second Dirty Harry movie, Magnum Force. He went after a group of corrupt cops. They were the bad guys, and Dirty Harry Callahan stood for them. And remember, Scorpio was a bad dude, obviously inspired by the Zodiac Killer. He was a serial killer. And I still don't understand. Dirty Harry Callahan, again, a product of its time. It's almost 50 years old, half a century old. Forrest Gump was made by intelligent people. It won 6 Oscars and is beloved by many. While the film is condescending to anyone with a disability, Vietnam vets, and people with AIDS, among others, it's actually hostile to protesters, activists, and the counterculture. Is it? Is it really? Like, I'm curious. The film is condescending to anyone with a disability. I don't know. I mean, I think that Lieutenant Dan, a man who was wounded in battle, finds a new lease on life. And he finds love again, and he has a long-time friendship with Forrest Gump. But okay, I don't quite know what you're seeing here. And people with AIDS, among others, it's actually hostile to protesters, activists, and counterculture. As a bonus, lovable title character Nathan Bedford Forrest was named after his grandfather, the first Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. Yes, I understand all these things, Tim, but that's all part of the story, and life is messy. And I think one of the messages about Forrest Gump is that very thing. But we persevere. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Steven Spielberg and George Lucas are generally compassionate filmmakers, but this film went a little too far in trying to replicate the mood of 1930s action serials. Like those old movies, the exotic villains are portrayed as primitive and bloodthirsty foreigners, resulting in negative and stereotypical depictions of India and Hindu customs. Well, aside from the fact that they're using the dark arts to be able to, rip the beating hearts out of people, I don't think anyone is really mistaking the villain, Mola Ram and his followers, as depictions of anybody that was ever really real. Me Before You. This is the least iconic film on the list, but it's worth listing because it's so insensitive. Me Before You is a romance about a man, Sam Claflin, who becomes paralyzed after an accident and falls in love with his new companion, Emilia Clarke from Game of Thrones. He urges her to live her life to the fullest instead of living half a life with him, so he kills himself, presenting the idea that suicide is better than life with a disability. Is that what they're saying in that movie, though? Like, is it? So let me just get this straight. You've now told me that we can't watch movies, that movies are problematic because a film mocks liberal judges and do-gooders, and the villain claims police brutality. You also say that we can't watch movies because exotic villains are portrayed as primitive and bloodthirsty foreigners, resulting in negative and stereotypical depictions of India. Let's see, what else are you saying? Oh, right. Presenting the idea that suicide is better than life with a disability. Let's go on. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Quentin Tarantino is adored by cinephiles and stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt are charismatic and talented, so it's easy to overlook the film's regressive messages. It's about two middle-aged white guys who long for the old days in Hollywood. In other words, make Hollywood great again. Really? The characters in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you're now alluding that they would be Trump supporters? The film is set in 1969 when some Americans felt the status quo was being threatened by minorities, hippies, and newly liberated women. So wait a minute. We can't set a movie in 1969 anymore? And yes, some Americans did feel the status quo was being threatened by minorities, hippies, and newly liberated women. They did. They felt that way. From the controversial depiction of Bruce Lee, one of Hollywood's rare Asian stars, to the fact that black people seem non-existent and the Mexicans, as they're called in the film, are car valets or waitresses, Tarantino's film seems to have several blind spots. Does it, though? Does it? I would think a discerning viewer might decide, you know, dude, I think Tarantino knows exactly what he was doing, and he was making statements that might run contrary to what you think they are. And Charles Manson's white supremacist agenda is ignored. Is it? Is it? I mean, I think the movie requires you to understand who Charles Manson is for the film to work. It requires you to bring in some of your education and intelligence into the movie. By the way, as all of these movies do. The Children's Hour, based on a play by liberal activist Lillian Hellman, the drama tackled a once taboo subject. Two teachers, Shirley MacLaine and Audrey Hepburn, are horrified when a bratty student accuses them of being lesbians. Eventually, one of the teachers weepingly confesses that she does have lesbian feelings and then does something that's presented as inevitable. She kills herself. The film set the tone for depictions of LGBT people for decades, showing them as self-loathing, pitiable, and perverted. Well, that's changed, hasn't it? Hey, you go ahead and look at Jonathan Demme's movie Philadelphia. Denzel Washington and Tom Hanks develop a friendship. Denzel defends Tom Hanks. I mean, so The Children's Hour was that story in 1961. Are you telling me that it's problematic because I can't watch a movie and go, wow, this movie is almost 60 years old and I do understand the problematic nature of the messages of that time. But in 1961, it's not like I could go to West Hollywood and dance at Rage in leather chaps with my friends and feel, like I could do it in the open, like I can now. Not that I put on leather chaps and go dance at Rage, although I have danced at Rage and I liked it. But let me tell you, in 1961, things were different. Do I need disclaimers? Hang on, let me finish. The Searchers, 1956. John Wayne plays a Civil War veteran on the Confederate side who goes on a 5-year search for his niece who is kidnapped by the Comanches. Wayne's character, Ethan Edwards, is an unapologetic racist who sees all Native Americans as less than human. Revered director John Ford created a physically beautiful film that has inspired an ongoing debate. Fans see Searchers as a sober study of bigotry. Detractors say it's impossible to overlook the fact that Native Americans are depicted as savage or comical. Whatever you think, The Searchers is the epitome of a problematic film and should be screened with discussions. Why? Why? Okay, you've now gone through and listed all of these things that are problematic in all of these movies, and you're telling me that I need discussions and I need people to explain to me why these movies are problematic? I would say to you, Tim, that eventually, on a long enough scale of time, every single movie that comes out is going to be problematic for somebody. And I just don't think we should live in a society where everybody needs to explain to smart adults what they can and can't see, how they should and shouldn't see something. I mean, why is it nowadays that everybody is so quick to tell everybody else what they're supposed to think, how they're supposed to think it, and in such a very superficial way, Tim? I expect more from you. You know, when I go see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, there are people that went and saw it that didn't understand, don't even know about Charles Manson. Well, you know where I would think that you know what we need? We don't need depictions, or we don't need discussions about movies. What we need is a smart population of people that are free thinkers, that are well-educated, well-rounded, and understand history. That's what we need. We need smart, thoughtful people. We don't need disclaimers about how human history is a horrible litany of things that we did terribly to one another, because educated, smart people already know that. What we need is very smart, educated people that can have intellectual discourse without being told what they can and can't say and what's problematic and what isn't. And it's just, that's not what we should have. What you should be asking for is great education, where teachers are paid more, where kids are taught all kinds of things, not just what is good for a test so we can justify next week's fiscal budget or whatever. We need smart, intelligent, free-thinking people. And not just for people that can afford to go to whatever schools, for everybody. Why aren't you calling for that, man? I want an educated film audience. I want people that are smart, that love art, that aren't so quick. They don't have hair triggers with which to get offended by any depiction of a movie that's 60 years old. We don't need that. We need smart, educated, intelligent people that love art, that can understand, that are discerning, and know that human history is problematic. It's problematic for all of us. Go back far enough and somebody's pissed. You know why? Because human beings raped, murdered, pillaged, enslaved, tortured. We're the worst. Human beings are the worst. They are the worst. But you know what all these movies tell you? You know what all these movies tell you as viewers when you watch these movies? They give you, at least I would hope, let's be better than that. However, I would say if you run into Mola Ram on your trip to India, if you're a tourist, and he's using magic, and he has the Sankara stones, and there is true evil, and he is ripping out poor slave boys' hearts, and they're still beating when he does it. We have bigger problems than disclaimers on frickin' movies, dude. Just saying, man. You know, what we need is not reactionary disclaimers on every single movie that's made. What we need are smart, educated people that can have learned discourse in discussing why these things are problematic then, and how we've made progress, and what we can do moving forward to be better. Anyway, that's my thoughts. That's my impassioned plea for today. Let's not be doing these kinds of things. Let's concentrate instead on bettering ourselves, making our education system better, creating more free thinkers, people that understand that if they feel bad about something, they can look inside themselves and say, I understand this was problematic. I don't need it to go away. What I need to do is understand why it was created in the first place, how far we've come since then, and let's not be this way again. Otherwise, you'll get rid of everything, Tim. All of our past. We're just going to erase it all because we were terrible to one another, and we still are. So, I just don't understand why Variety needs to publish articles like this. Variety that's supposed to celebrate the art of filmmaking. You know, there's a lot of movies, by the way, that have been made that aren't problematic. There's a lot of foreign films that, I didn't see one foreign film that made this list, by the way. We're only looking at American movies. So Tim, How come you didn't look for other foreign films that have problematic depictions of something? Why is it just American movies? Do you have something against foreigners? Or it's only American movies and American filmmakers get your ire, get your dander up? Are only American? I mean, I'm just being facetious. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And reading these kinds of articles is so, it's just, for anybody who fought and died for these kinds of things and for rights, and it's embarrassing when now the answer to that is let's wrap everything up and explain why the world is problematic. I mean, where are you going to stop? Where are you going to stop telling people the world's problematic? You know where you should only stop. You know where this should happen? In history class, in good history classes, in literature classes, where you can study these things without having, I don't know, an academic trigger warning, where you can go into a school and you can learn about these things and have a real, rigorous intellectual exploration and discourse of all of these issues. Not get rid of them, but discuss them. Figure out why these things happened, how they happened, what does it all mean? Don't just get rid of it or codify it or put it like, let's just out of the gate, let's just call this is problematic because I've said it's problematic today. And who the fuck are you to say it's problematic? I don't think it's problematic. But then again, I'm an educated viewer. I just think it's crazy. We live in a society where now we have adults telling other adults what is and isn't proper art. We saw what happened in Europe when some guy got up and said, you know what? I'm going to start telling you what art you can see, what people are human and not. And we're going to help our great land rise and bring the Ubermensch to the world. It never ends well, man. It never ends well. How do I know that? History. Let's teach history. Let's teach science and psychology and sociology and ethnic studies and all the different disciplines that will help us understand ourselves better. And let's not have people say, you can't say this and you can't say that and you can't do this and you can't do that. Let's teach it all. Let's get it all out on the table and let's discuss it like real adults. Anyway, there you go. I've got letters to read, people. I have letters. And you know who's here first? I have a letter from Terry Flynn, my former and your former. You know him, you love him, the former moderator on this group. Terry Flynn is here, and he has written a letter. Dear Rob, I am one of those people who are totally with you that Star Trek Discovery and Picard are, whether you agree with the attempted integration of contemporary plot arcs, etc., simply badly written, with little or no attention paid to canon. They should be the Star Wars equivalent of Legends. But they're not the only ones. DS9 Hard Time is arguably the most distressing, dark, non-Roddenberry episode ever. But it also demonstrates the best in humanity at the end, and in a weird way is also the most Roddenberry-esque. This, and indeed so much of DS9, a show I didn't appreciate on first watching but now adore, illustrate when Star Trek peaked. Everything after, the 4 Next Generation movies, thank you Red Letter Media for pointing out why First Contact sucked. By the way, Terry, I just want to point out that in 1996, Dave Hargrove and I wrote an article in Sci-Fi Universe magazine called Worst Contact, Why Star Trek First Contact is the Worst Star Trek Film. Now, we are a little tongue-in-cheek about it, but I thought we brought up many salient points, and that predates Red Letter Media by over a decade. Just saying. Everything in that piece of crap called Voyager and that piece of double crap called Enterprise should not be canon. I got to disagree with you there. If ever there's a move to reboot things and carry on the Prime timeline, it should really carry on from DS9 and nothing else. Though people think Roddenberry would have hated most of DS9, I think he might have seen the quite often subtle messages in there and approved. DS9 was the pinnacle of Star Trek, though I loved classic Picard. We should learn a lot from DS9 in terms of ethics and the subtleties of life. Yes, but you know what? I think modern Star Trek fans would say, DS9 is problematic and we really need disclaimers and we should have discussions before every episode so we, can tell you why it's problematic and, we're going to take away your ability as an adult to discern for yourself. Anyway, yeah. Look, I love DS9, and to be honest, I watched the fourth season two-parter yesterday. The third season two-parter, Past Tense, Part 1 and 2. Where some of our crew, Dr. Bashir, Cisco, and Dax, wind up in 2024 San Francisco, where their homeless problem has exploded. Talk about prophetic. A great episode. Boy, I wish it was in HD. But, yeah. So, I'm with you there. I love Star Trek DS9. I don't understand people who don't. But I think it's usually because people haven't necessarily watched it. Ian Samuels is back in. What a prolific writer you are. Rob and fellow Robservationists, I would like to discuss the criminal underuse of a great character from literature on the big or small screen, one of the fascinating characters created by the underrated novelist Dennis Wheatley. Of the 11-book series, only one was adapted into a film, one of only two of Wheatley's books to be adapted to film. Jean-Armand Duplessis was the 10th Duke de Richelieu. His father was obviously the 9th Duke, and his mother was a Russian princess. He indulged in high finance with his friend Simon Aron, a Jewish banker, before enlisting in the French military. A monarchist and imperialist, became involved in a plot to reinstate the French monarchy by overthrowing the Republic government and putting a new French king on the throne. When the plot failed, he took the place of the would-be king so that he could escape. De Richelieu would become the prisoner in the mask. This was the first book in the series. It was not the first published, but was later written as one of a number of prequels to the first novel published, which was The Forbidden Territory. In fact, 4 of the later novels, The Prisoner in the Mask, Vendetta in Spain, where he uncovers a plot that led to his wife's murder in Madrid, The Second Seal, where he works as an agent gathering details of the buildup to the First World War, and 3 Inquisitive People, where, along with Simon Aron, American Rex von Ryn attempt to prove that their friend Richard Eaton is innocent of the murder of his mother. The further books following The Forbidden Territory were, of course, The Devil Rides Out, the second book published, The Golden Spaniard, Code Word Golden Fleece, Strange Conflict, Gateway to Hell, and Dangerous Inheritance. His adventures cover both the First and Second World Wars, including Nazis dabbling with black magic, both thrillers and black magic. Indeed, thrilling stuff. So in 1968, more than 30 years after the book was published, Hammer Horror made their adaptation of The Devil Rides Out, with Christopher Lee masterfully taking on the titular role of Duke de Richelieu, one of Hammer's greats in my opinion. When Hammer started to struggle during the 1970s as their films were made on a shoestring budget and Hollywood had started putting big money behind horror with Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist, Hammer continued with more de Richelieu movies with Lee in the lead. With the same production values of The Devil Rides Out, such a series of films could have kept them going. Despite rumors that their longtime writer Jimmy Sangster had written scripts for both the Strange Conflict and Gateway to Hell adaptation, they did not take this road. One film they did make in 1976 was To the Devil, a Daughter, based on Wheatley's 1953 novel, but the film is awful. I believe the de Richelieu stories would be perfect material for a film series or would just as well be turned into a TV series. The truly excellent 1968 The Devil Rides Out shows that Wheatley's work can be adapted and adapted well. A series you think Netflix may be interested in? Ian, this is a great idea. I love The Devil Rides Out. The Devil Rides Out is one of my favorite Hammer movies. The Devil Rides Out and Vampire Circus, I think, are my 2 favorite Hammer movies. And I do like the Karnstein Vampire trilogy. Lust for a Vampire, Twins of Evil, and why am I drawing a blank on that? Why am I drawing a blank on the third one? The Karnstein trilogy. Twins of Evil. The Vampire Lovers. Twins of Evil, Lust for a Vampire, and The Vampire Lovers, right? Isn't that what it is? I love those movies too. But I agree. I think that would be great. Anybody should look into that. That's a great idea. Why not? Somebody should do that. Maybe they should do it. The BBC should do it. I think it's a great idea. Jeffrey Mao is here. Jeffrey Mao. Jeffrey Mao says, let's see. Okay. Hey, Rob. Like I mentioned in my last letter, we imagination connoisseurs, as members of the Post-Geek Singularity, really do have a great thing going on with Robservations. And despite the occasional issues and whatnot, there's no other place online that I found where my crazy, geeky ideas are appreciated and welcome. So here's another of my interesting ideas. I've probably mentioned this before in different letters, but I think a lot about what the hell it is that I'm actually watching when I watch a movie. Well, perhaps, Jeffrey, that if you had a disclaimer at the beginning and perhaps a discussion where people can tell you what you're about to see or tell you what it all means, that you might enjoy it more. And I say that with love. Probably around when I was a teenager, probably late teens, I started having an existential crisis in terms of dealing with the reality and unreality of what I was seeing on screen. I guess this started when I saw a few of the newer spate of found footage films, my favorite being 84 Charlie Mopic. This was a very underappreciated film in both the found footage and Vietnam genres, but really shaped my thinking of what would be the most realistic feeling that you could get in a film. I didn't know the word verisimilitude at the time, but it certainly would have been the word I would use. To me, this type of film would have all of the look and feel of a documentary-style film, with all photography captured by a real camera person in a real space and from a real location that a person could get to using the structure of that location. Think of the camera person as being invisible, and the camera is invisible, so the camera is subject to the environment, the same as the characters, and the camera can't be any place that a person couldn't get to. To get from one scene to the other, the camera must take transportation that the characters take also. So the camera would ride in the car along with the characters, and of course no cutting, as the camera is fixed to the usually back seat. However, we would never get to see the camera open a car door and get in and out. There will be some necessary questions as to exactly how the camera moves around if the unseen camera operator cannot open its own doors. Or can it? So as a hypothetical director of this film, I would have some fun with it. For example, I would show the camera ready to jump in a car to go to the next scene, and the camera would already be a position in the right rear seat. One of the characters would try and sit in the camera seat, but the driver would tell the character that there was stuff on the seat and he couldn't sit there. In a later scene, the characters would all jump in one car, taking the camera seat, and the camera would just show the car taking off, leaving it standing there eating the car's dust. Another scene might show the camera following the character into a room, and the last person shuts the door in front of the camera. As you might have guessed by now, the police or military procedural story is the best fit genre-wise for the type of film. It doesn't really work for a parlor drama, for example. There's a lot of fast movement, quick changes in scenes, lots of characters talking quickly, so it doesn't reveal the weaknesses of this format. I struggled a little bit with whether I want to make the film an actual mockumentary or use the unseen camera. I see many times where the characters and the producers tend to forget that the camera is supposed to be part of the story. Like in This Is Spinal Tap, they start off pretty well, but once the drama kicks in towards the latter part of the film, director Rob Reiner seems to forget that the camera has to be or have a reason where it is, and it's getting shots that a real person operating a camera should not be able to get. So I want that exact feeling of the handheld, down and dirty, ground-level camera, but for the entire film. I want the beginning of Saving Private Ryan shot from one camera and then continue. They charge the beach, the camera falls in the water, climbs out of the water, runs after the soldiers, gets onto the beach with them, etc. I would have loved to have seen the entire film shot that way, and I think it could have worked. Now, something like Apocalypse Now? Maybe not. I like films that had part of it that looked like it was shot documentary style, like the beginning of District 9. Would it have worked for the whole film? Part of me hopes that it would have, but it would have been a hard choice to pull off. But I do like that Neil Blomkamp made that choice, and he did use the gun cam footage later as a nod to that. I've never watched David Ayer's End of Watch, but it sounds like it's the closest film to what I'm envisioning. Although, as I understand it, it's a combination of dash cam, body cam, and video footage shot by the characters in the film. The conceit is a little hard to pull off, as there's going to be times when you just can't have someone holding a camera and shooting the action and have it make sense. That's why I just ditched the whole pretense of the content being captured in movie cameras and go with the invisible camera. That way I can have my camera where I want it to be, not have to have a camera hold the camera, not have to have a character hold the camera, but yet still get exactly the same look and feel. I would not be against, though, an attempt to make a totally strict found footage film, say about a real-life incident where you can use news footage. I think of that Mark Wahlberg movie about the Boston Marathon bombing, Why not do that with a mix of dash cams, body cams, traffic cams, cell phone video? So it could have been very interesting to do it in that style. So Rob, yet another one of my nutty ideas about movies, but understandably born out of a desire for me to get the most verisimilitudinous experience possible. Rob, if you ever get that ink and idol, promise me that you will take the money that you make from selling it and make a movie like what I want to see. Thanks, and keep on imagining. Jeff. Well, Jeff, you bring up a really interesting point. The found footage film conceit is, I think, a very interesting one from a production standpoint for the very reasons that you bring up. I mean, I think movies that have done it well, like Cloverfield, because with Cloverfield, they found this tape and they're basically just playing the whole tape, and it stops and starts because somebody found it to play it. My problem with a lot of the found footage conceit is that the post-production sort of shatters, unless you have a reason why you've just found a raw tape and you're just going to play it back for whatever reason. When you then watch the movie, I mean, it was mixed. There was post work done on it. There's credits done on it, whatever. And I like what you're saying, but the problem is the very act of filming anything presupposes some kind of a filmmaker. Somebody had to set up this idea. And even when you have like Cloverfield, which I think does a really good job. I mean, as far as it goes, you're never not convinced that you're not watching a movie, but in the found footage technique is done very, very well, which I thought was really cool. But the very idea that you're going to watch a movie after the fact, like you sit down, I'm going to watch this movie. It's very weird. Like I was producing a film called I Killer, like iPod, but I Killer. Actually, hashtag I Killer. And it was about that. The director wanted to, by the way, the movie was never finished, unfortunately, but we shot it all. And the director really wanted this idea that you're always getting the gaze, the point of view of the killer. And he was stalking a woman, and he kept jumping back and forth with the conceit of having a camera. And I was like, well, dude, I know you want to show it from the killer's gaze, but where's the camera? And he couldn't wrap his head around what I was saying to him, because he's like, well, what about Halloween? And I'm like, yes, but Halloween is, while yeah, you see Michael Myers' perspective, it's still a movie. Like, everybody knows that Michael Myers did not have a camera, and he didn't, when he put that mask over his face in the beginning of Halloween, they don't tell you that they're not trying to convince you that you're watching real footage. It's a movie. And so what he wanted to do was go between the two, and you can't do a movie and found footage. It doesn't work. And so it would drive him nuts. I'm like, where's the camera? If you're going to show the killer's point of view and then you want to show him stalking her, you can't show it from his like point of view and use a camera. And he couldn't wrap his head around that. And it was interesting. It was interesting because he didn't really know what I was saying. And it's, for people, I understand it's a hard concept to grasp, but I still think I understand what you're saying, the idea of this invisible camera. But then I would ask, well, why is there an invisible camera? And people would just kind of keep picking up the camera when they needed to, or not sit there or something. I mean, what you would have to do is, I think you could do that the way you're saying it, but you'd have to continually have people pick up and move the camera, so we know there's a camera there as a viewer. I mean, what's really funny, if you love movies, and I know everybody watching this channel loves movies, you know that everything you're watching is completely fake. It's completely fake. Everything, but verisimilitude within the proscenium of that frame convinces you that you're able to suspend your disbelief. All what you know in the back of your mind, that, oh, there was a crew there and they lit this whole scene and all this stuff. Like when you're watching a scary movie or something and shafts of light are coming through and that's the only light in a room, and somebody's walking down the corridor and you know someone's going to jump out, whether it's a xenomorph or whether it's a ghost or whatever. The only reason you've bought into a fiction that has been created for you, and every frame, every single shot, that's why I'm the viceroy of verisimilitude. That's my raison d'etre in life, is to figure out how do you create that kind of verisimilitude in every shot of a movie. And I think the great filmmakers know how to do that because you have your mind open to believe, and you want somebody to take you on that journey. It's a very interesting, I think it's kind of an existential. I'd love, maybe one day I'll teach a college course on the philosophy of verisimilitude. How would you, tricking an audience into believing make-believe. That's what I would call the class. There you go. Sign me up, Pasadena City College. I'll teach that course, and I'll take you through various movies that I think have peak verisimilitude, and we will go through and discover and examine why is that so hard to do. It's very hard to do, but this is a very interesting question you've asked. It's very, very existential. Let's see. Hang on. I have another one here. Saban Erdman writes in, "Hi Rob, I've seen multiple videos on the internet of fans taking DVD versions of 90s shows like Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Babylon 5 and turning them into 4K video files using machine learning. As you know, the reason the shows are not in HD today is because of how the post-production was done in standard def. Why don't the copyright holders use their vast resources to employ state-of-the-art machine learning software to take their non-HD shows and upscale them to 4K? It wouldn't be as ideal as a full remaster like for TNG, but it would be better than nothing. Additionally, this would provide viewer choice for shows when copyright holders decide to remaster their content in a new aspect ratio like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or The Wire, but one of those was done really well and one of those was done in the most horrific way possible. I assume that the copyright holders believe modern audiences prefer widescreen. Heaven forbid a show we have vertical black bars, and I understand that the studios do not want to remaster the show again for the relatively niche audience that wants the shows in their original format. I would rather watch the DVD version of Buffy over the incorrectly formatted HD version on Hulu any day. The color timing, everything about that version of Buffy is one of the most abysmal miscarriages of creative justice in the history of the medium. If the studio gave me the choice of what HD version to watch, I would be far more likely to watch it. The process seems to be relatively cheap, especially if fans are able to do the upscaling, so why don't copyright holders upscale their content too? Thanks, Saban. Linked is a Reddit post about the remastering of Babylon 5. I would like to read this. And I did not know about this, so I'm going to put this in the live chat. So there you go. Check that out. Well, first of all, look, machine learning and AI and deep learning, AI, all that's going to be fantastic in the future. But, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but my problem is it's not doing it correctly. You've got to go back to the original negative. As deep learning can be, and the computing power that's available to you, I really think it's important to go back and remaster properly like Star Trek The Next Generation did. Star Trek The Next Generation it was beautifully done. Look at that first season, the care. It's amazing. It's amazing what they did, and I think that they need to go back and remaster things. As far as aspect ratio is concerned, Star Trek The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, the only way to put them in 16:9 properly, if you wanted to do it, is you can't. You literally have to recompose the shots. I think The Wire was shot, they opened up the negative. I'm not sure. I've never watched something about that restoration. But Star Trek The Next Generation, you'd have to recompose the shots. And I completely object to that. And they also didn't do visual effect shots. If you saw, we actually did a piece about that on the Blu-ray. You'd see sometimes the Enterprise, there is no room. It just disappears off the screen in the 4:3 aspect ratio, so there's no more. And I don't think there's so much composition for the 4:3 frame in Next Generation and Deep Space Nine that I don't think recomposing would ruin it. In the case of Buffy, not only was it recomposed, the color timing was the fucking worst. Whoever did all that, terrible. Just terrible. But, yeah, I would prefer, I think any copyright holder should go back and do it correctly, which is go back to the original negative. And that's what I would do. But, good letter, though. I appreciate you writing in. Luis Cortez says, "Hey, Rob, hope you're doing great. I just finished reading Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom, Triumph and Torment, and I loved it. I recently got into Marvel Comics, and this one's definitely been my favorite so far. Just want to know your thoughts on this comic and ask what is your favorite Marvel comic? I hope you have a great week." Well, that's a good question, and I'm looking here. Let me look around. Hold on. Oh, since you brought it up, I always love when people ask me about stuff like this, and I can just go in and go, "Look at this, my friend. Doctor Doom, Triumph, and Torment." And this is the hardcover, and it's actually signed by Mike Mignola. If you look in there, I had it signed right there. Can you see it? Well, right where, there, signed it. This is interesting. This hardcover, like, now you make me want to look. When did I get this hard? And why doesn't it have a Brodart on it? It should have a Brodart on it. I love this comic, and this was published. This is 31 years old. 31 years old. And I bought this when it first came out. I love this comic. It's so good. I mean, look at this cover. Look at that Mignola cover, man. Wait, so you can't. Ugh. God, that's good stuff. Good stuff. I loved it. Now, you ask me what my favorite Marvel comic is. My God. Well, everyone knows. I mean, look. I keep bringing this stuff out because I've been going through my comics. But Moon Knight, last issue, Sienkiewicz issue, I can't decide whether I'm going to get this. I want to get these all slabbed, to be honest. But my favorite Marvel comic of all time, there's so many. There's so many Marvel comics. I mean, I love Moon Knight. I love, the Mensch Sienkiewicz Moon Knight. But is it the best Marvel comic? No. I mean, there are runs. I'd have to go in and talk about, like, when I read, when Frank Miller came back to Daredevil and did Born Again, and Kingpin takes apart Matt Murdock's life, and at the end, Matt Murdock goes home and his entire tenement, his building falls down, and in the rubble, there is the Daredevil costume, and there's Matt Murdock. You shouldn't have signed it, Kingpin. I mean, it's just a great moment. There's so many Marvel comics that I loved. I mean, I loved Marvels, Alex Ross doing Marvels. But it's mostly runs. I mean, I've loved X-Men runs. I've loved Avengers runs. I've loved Fantastic Four runs. I don't think I have a favorite Marvel comic. I mean, the reason I love Moon Knight so much is because the Moon Knight run, the Mensch Sienkiewicz run, got me into reading comics again. That and Camelot 3000, 1 through 12, got me back into reading comics. So, yeah. But I'm glad that you read. It's nice that people are still finding comics that are 30 years old and reading them. I think that's pretty cool. I love that. Stephen H. is here with a letter, sends in a letter. "Hey, Rob, longtime viewer, first time writing in. Let me start by saying, well, first of all, thank you for writing in. Let me start by saying the buildup and excitement leading to watching a movie for the first time has been one of the things I cherish. I still remember the trailers for The Dark Knight and how I felt when I first heard and saw Heath Ledger's Joker. Having followed Christian Bale and Christopher Nolan after seeing Batman Begins, tacked on the build for my excitement. I say this as every year there was a movie I couldn't wait to see. Then in 2017, something happened, as Justice League was my most anticipated. Having a love for Joss Whedon dating back to the days of the original run of Buffy the Vampire Slayer on the WB and UPN, I was actually thinking he could do something amazing with Justice League. I still think he could have, with more time to write the script and allowed as much runtime to tell his own story. Yet we all know he took over from Zack Snyder following his family emergency. As someone who loves Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, I've come to become a Zack Snyder fan as I checked out previous work during the build-up for those films. Still, one of my favorite writers and directors in Joss Whedon was taking over Justice League. When I came out of seeing Justice League, I was disappointed as it felt like a Cliff's Notes film for something better. Again, I know the short time Whedon had to make the movie, but I was crushed. And seeing the low box office performance, I worried about this iteration of the live-action big-screen Justice League. Seeing Snyder fans bickering with Whedon fans tore me apart inside, as I'm a fan of both. Seeing a DC universe that Zack Snyder created being changed and films like Suicide Squad altered through editing, I became angry at Warner Brothers and DC. In 2018 and 2019 came and went with lost excitement. While I love Marvel Studios, Blumhouse Films, and others, nothing seems to break through my disdain for what happened to Zack Snyder, Joss Whedon, and Justice League. I thought, how long until something comes along that gets me hyped and excited again? Then, through my love for one Harley Quinn, I checked out Birds of Prey in IMAX, and I saw the prologue for Tenet. And I was floored. The hair on my arm stood up, and it was then I felt the excitement I'd been missing. Shortly thereafter, coronavirus hit, and I would be lying if I said I still plan to see Tenet in theaters. With health issues in my family, I can't run the risk. Knowing I will most likely miss Tenet in theaters kills the excitement I gained. It was around this time I began to fully move on from the DCEU that Snyder was building, and I thought, no way Warner Brothers and DC would allow Zack Snyder to finish his version of Justice League, and yet, here I am, waiting in anticipation for Zack Snyder's Justice League next year. But not only does 2021 bring us Snyder's Justice League, but Joss Whedon is returning to television with a new series, The Nevers. Whether it's waiting on Tenet to hit Blu-ray or finally getting some sense of closure to Zack Snyder's Justice League or seeing Joss Whedon return to television, I finally have not just something, but multiple things I'm looking forward to and excited for. Even in these weird, scary, and chaotic times we live in, I hope there's something to keep others excited and that it is never lost. Stephen H. Shivering Melody. Stephen H., what a great letter. I want to thank you for writing this letter. What a great letter this is. And I have to say, you know what? I think that maintaining your childlike sense of excitement and wonder is a lifestyle choice. I really do. Look, I love James Bond. I get excited for every James Bond movie. In my life, there have been Bond movies I've seen that I walked out of that I hated. I hated View to a Kill. Hated it. Hated it when I first saw it. I hated it. I was looking so forward to it. But then we got Timothy Dalton's first outing, The Living Daylights, 2 years later. Loved it. Loved Dalton as Bond. Loved Living Daylights. Then License to Kill. Didn't love that. And then what happens? Because of a lawsuit for the first time, no James Bond movie for 6 years. Then we get Pierce Brosnan and GoldenEye. I like that. Nowadays, we live in the Daniel Craig era. I can't wait to see No Time to Die. I cannot wait. Still excited. Hated Spectre. I thought Spectre was a snooze. I couldn't believe it. I thought they bring back Blofeld. It's the most anemic thing ever. The end of the movie has James Bond shooting at Blofeld's helicopter with a Walther PPK on the Thames. Like, what the hell, man? Why doesn't the helicopter just fly higher? It's just terrible. Hated it. Hated everything about it. But that doesn't mean I'm not eagerly awaiting to see No Time to Die. Look, like I always say, we're surrounded by infinitely cool stuff. If Star Wars has you down, hey, maybe they'll make The Mandalorian Season 2. And lo and behold, they are. It could be better. Boba Fett's coming back. You never know. If you don't like one thing, there's something over here that's equally awesome. We live in a world where we're surrounded by awesomeness all the time. So your favorite franchise has been totally corporatized and made, horrifically bad, like Star Trek has been since 2009. Unlike Terry, I find value in not all of Voyager, but some of Voyager and Enterprise. But I find no value in Star Trek over the last 11 years. And I keep waiting for the Star Trek hostage crisis to be over, and one day it will be. One day the people that are making it will just have to throw in the towel and give up and say that, boy, our Star Trek really sucked. Nobody wants to see it. So now let's go ruin another franchise with Clarice. Oh, wait. Maybe it'll be good. But, hope springs eternal. So I always say that we live in fascinating, interesting, amazing times. And as imagination connoisseurs, there's so much stuff that we're lucky to have. And I'm not just saying you should, eat something because it's put in front of you. But there's some great stuff. I can't wait to see Black Widow. I can't wait to see The Eternals. I can't wait to see No Time to Die. I can't wait to see Justice for Han. I know it's Fast 9, but I'm just going to call it Justice for Han. I can't wait. I can't wait to see The Matrix 4. I can't wait to see WandaVision. I can't wait to see Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I can't wait to see Dune. There's a lot of cool stuff on that horizon, folks. You should be excited. And one day, kind of like, when Robert Duvall said about Vietnam, someday this war is going to end. Someday this coronavirus will end, and we will all be in movie theaters once again, and I will be able to see a James Bond movie in IMAX. Hopefully I can see Dune in IMAX. I cannot wait. So have faith. Omar 94 is back. Between Omar on 94 and Ian Samuels, who will write more letters in 2020 to Robservations, the show about something? Hi, Rob. Typically when a movie's made, I always felt that it was the studio and executives that would get the final say on something, whether it's hiring creative talent or something like that. However, that wasn't entirely true. I read how Don Simpson, producer of Flashdance, Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2, and Top Gun, was so powerful in the mid-'80s, he was able to get Paramount to do what he wanted, which was to get screenwriter Larry Ferguson removed from his screenplay duties for the movie The Presidio in order to rewrite the script for Beverly Hills Cop 2. I always felt the studios and executives would make that decision, but I guess not, since it seems if a producer or director is very successful, he or she can have more control. You've been on sets, so maybe you know more about that behind the scenes of movies. I find it very interesting how Simpson could do that. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, Omar, when you are a producer, a powerful producer in Hollywood, and the studio is going to you to produce a film, they usually defer to you to make those kinds of decisions. You're the person they hire. In the case of Simpson Bruckheimer, I don't know when their Paramount deal was in place, but Simpson Bruckheimer was coming off, you had Flashdance, you had Beverly Hills Cop, obviously, you had Beverly Hills Cop 2, you had Top Gun, Days of Thunder. They were hugely powerful producers, and they were the ones that put those projects together, so the executives defer to them, especially when, I don't know if they had their deal yet. I don't think they did. If memory serves, their first movie that they made under their insanely lucrative production deal that didn't quite work out, I think was Days of Thunder. But then, as producers, as they made their mark. And what the studio wants is they say, okay, producers, you clearly know what you're doing. We're going to go with you. Keep making movies for us. So usually, a lot of the time, studio executives, if you're not dealing with a production company, like when I was working at Warner Brothers, Joel Silver was on the lot, Silver Pictures, and right across in the little donut area, Richard Donner's company was on the lot. Clint Eastwood's company was on the lot, Malpaso. So you had the Donner company, you had Silver Pictures, you had Malpaso, and they were all actually, Malpaso was even close. So they have their producing staff there, and they still oversee what movies. They still were working in tandem, but if Joel Silver wanted to make a film for Warner Brothers, they would allow Joel Silver to go make a movie for Warner Brothers, because at the time, Joel Silver had an incredible track record with making films there, and he made them for a long time. And so they would defer to him, and that the producer does get to call the shots. Now, if the studio strenuously objected to a choice he made or she made, if the producer in question was a woman, then they would step in and say, look, we don't buy it. We're not going with you here. But for the most part, it was really up to the producer to do these things. So, yeah, that's usually how it would go. I want to thank you for writing in. Let's jump over to what you guys are saying. What are you saying in over here? Let me get back to where are we here? Let's see. Lancelot and Ariane, all the way from England. Robster. 1 of 3. I saw that last night's whining about movies was Event Horizon. I created the special features for the original release, and as part of that, 88 reels of film were brought over to me, completely blocking the film department. Needless to say, I wasn't very popular. Martin Hunter came over and went through every reel looking for cut scenes. We found very little, incomplete scenes. These were included on the documentary. I also had to sit through other reels at Paramount in London. Imagine sitting through the shot of Earth and the space station and the camera spinning 360 degrees 10 times in a row on a big screen. They offered me lunch. I had to decline. Anyway, I did my very best trying to find deleted stuff. For those of you who don't know, last night on Whining About Movies, we talked about Event Horizon. It's funny, when we were watching the film, Elizabeth commented on that shot. It's a shot where the camera pulls out from Sam Neill looking at a porthole of the space station. It does a full 360-degree spin, and it does make you dizzy. It absolutely does. Yeah, they talk a lot about like how all the scenes, the debauched and depraved scenes they shot in hell or whatever, what happened to the crew of the Event Horizon, those are the legendary deleted scenes. Apparently they were pretty extreme what they shot. So I would like to see those scenes, actually, and maybe somebody will find them. I don't know. I know they've announced Scream Factory is, I guess, putting out a 4K, their first 4K disc. I think maybe it's just 4K remastering, but yeah, I want to see that. Willow's here, and Willow sends in a tip and says, what happens if the legendary Monsterverse crossed over with Pacific Rim? How do you think this version of Godzilla will fare against the Jaegers and Kaiju? I think he'll stomp everyone. Willow, I'm with you. I mean, look, I'm a huge Pacific Rim fan, as everyone knows. I love Pacific Rim. I love my Kaiju movies. The Kaiju movies I've always loved them. And I don't know, I think that the Jaegers would probably fight Godzilla and get their asses kicked, but if they ever did that, I think that they would team up at the end. Like Godzilla and the Jaegers would fight against the alien incursion. And I would love to see that, frankly. I would love to see that. Yeah, wouldn't you? Do you like Pacific Rim? Joseph Campbell is here and says, I love old mystery movies, the Charlie Chan and Mr. Moto movies. They have black, Asian, and Mexican stereotypes and will offend people, but you have to look at the time they were made and enjoy it for what it is. Well, I'll tell you something, too, about, and again, I am not defending stereotyping of people, but one of the reasons that they fell back on stereotypes in movies back in the day was because not everybody had seen people like that before. I mean, believe it or not, across the United States, the Asian population, how many people had met them? How many people had met people from south of the border? And that was a quick, is it a good thing they did that? No. But it's not like they were trying to use exaggerated traits so people would get it. There was racism involved as well, but it was also it was like a trope. And so it wasn't only because everybody was racist, even though, let's face it, there's a lot of racism in the world. There always has been, and I'm sure there always will be. There will be somebody that will hate everybody. Every ethnic group will be hated by somebody. It's just the way of the world. Until, of course, we start looking at ourselves as the one race that we are, which is the human race. Hopefully that'll happen. I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime, but that's why we should go to the stars. But yes, those stereotypes were tropes in movies. And, again, there would be people now, I think, that would tell you shouldn't enjoy that. But when you go back in time and you're like, look, man, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, this is the way the world was back then. I mean, now it's very, very different. So, yeah, and I think, look, you've got to look at movies the way it's like. Again, I think it's a tough issue. I go back to what I was saying up front. I think an educated, aware, both self-aware and aware of the world, a very well-educated population that understands history and understands art and understands the changing of time and the development and evolution of social mores and cultures and things like that is our best defense. Getting all angry about certain depictions and feeling personally offended by something now is a response I don't think that's helpful in the long run, and admittedly, I think it's kind of dangerous, to be honest. Because you don't want to get rid of art that existed, as problematic as it might be. What you want to do is you want to keep it, and so we understand it. So we go look at where we came from, and look at where we are now, and hopefully we're in a better place. But I don't think that's I don't think the best thing to do is get rid of these things that are problematic today, because eventually everything will be gone. Stubble McShave is here and says, I don't think Forrest Gump was the best movie the year it came out, but I think it was the most impressive in terms of filmmaking and with very many interesting themes. It's part war movie, part drama, part comedy. It has the same screenplay writer as Dune. I agree with you. You can choose to look at things one way and you can see only the problematic elements in them. But on the other hand, there's a lot of elements that aren't problematic either, and there's interesting stories being told there about a great many things. One person says it demeans all activists and all this and makes fun of disabled people. I would say I don't think it does, but I mean, it also has a lot more to say. It has a lot more to say about love and tolerance. I mean, it has a movie just doesn't say one thing. You can't go, this movie's problematic for this reason. Is Breakfast at Tiffany's about Mickey Rooney's character? No. It's about something very different. I think a lesson, a message that's worth hearing. Is there problematic elements in it? Yes, there is. But if you recognize those and you can understand why they're there and how they wound up there, rather than cancel Breakfast at Tiffany's, understand, get educated, learn, and let's move beyond it, and let's have intelligent discussions amongst adults who are able to have these conversations without freaking out and deciding to burn the negative. So, Bob Tozzi is here and says, on John Campia's show this morning, Aaron Cummings mentioned Janet Montgomery, and I thought to myself, oh man, where is Rob with his Hills Run Red slide when you need him? Well, you know what? I wasn't going to do it, Bob, but since you brought it up, if you want to hear from actress Janet Montgomery, you can watch a lovely interview I conducted with her on what? Oh, hey, the Hills Run Red Blu-ray, out this week from Scream Factory, with 6.5 hours of bonus features, including about, 2.5 or 3 hours of new video featurettes that I made, where you'll see Janet Montgomery behind the scenes. By the way, can I just tell you, my experience with her on the movie, I think Hills Run Red was the first movie she ever starred in. She was an absolute delight to work with. She was incredibly professional. She was wise beyond her years, and I loved working with her, and I think she delivers a great performance. I'm sorry we had to cut some of the more let's just say problematic elements of the film, but you get a sense of them in the special features. But I would love to have had I didn't realize they were going to talk about Janet Montgomery, but I love Janet Montgomery. I think she's a great talent, and I would expect her, as she transitions, she's going to go back and she's going to be a big movie star. Stub McShave says, Stephen Fry, quote, it's now very common to hear people say, I'm rather offended by that, as if that gives them certain rights. It's actually nothing more than a whine. I find that offensive. It has no meaning. It has no purpose. It has no reason to be respected as a phrase. I am offended by that. Well, so fucking what? That's kind of where I'm at. Does that mean we can't talk about it anymore? Penis is here. Penis sent in a tip and says, on behalf of penises everywhere, the world, according to Garp, and any Lorena Bobbitt telefilms are to be banned. I had mine surgically removed, but to have it bitten off. I love World According to Garp. I love John Lithgow's performance in World According to Garp. What a great, great, great movie. But that's funny, penis. I'm all for penises. I hope your penis hangs nicely. Garen Gillum sends in a tip and says, the publishers of D&D are censoring their own books, censoring and rewriting them when reprinting them to remove offensive contents. Orcs and Drow, dark elves, are apparently racist now, among other things. It's so ridiculous. Orcs and Drow, dark elves, are racist? Why are they racist? I don't understand. Well, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say about that. It's such a weird thing to me. I don't get it. I mean, I get it, but I don't. So they're going to go, orcs don't exist, dark elves don't exist. I really we're too far now. We're too far. I don't get it. I get it, but I think it's silly. Garen goes on and says, by the way, Rob, you were in perfect form on the Word Balloon podcast. That may have been your best Kurtzman rant yet. Bravo, sir. Yeah, I was on the Word Balloon podcast, and I get angry. I get angry. I got pretty angry. I went on a rant. It's the one thing, I can't get over it. I can't get over it. Yeah, but listen, John Suntress, who's a longtime member, a longtime imagination connoisseur, you can listen to his podcast, the Word Balloon podcast. I've done a number of them over the years, but the latest one, I think, was the one where I ranted and raved about Star Trek. I got mad. And it's nice to go dip back into Deep Space Nine. I mean, if anybody wants to watch the third season, two-parter, past tense, part 1 and 2, and then go and watch Far Beyond the Stars, which is a terrific episode. Ulrich Cole is here and sends in a super chat and says Star Trek Picard should really come with a warning. It probably should. Yeah, I mean, it's funny to me because I watched Star Trek Picard and I'm offended by how bad and stupid the writing is. And so, look, I'm not going to say that it should come with a warning, but I'm like, I would rather see something that's problematic that came from 60 years ago that you can discuss and be like, okay, let's have a discussion about this, rather than watching some new gobbledygook that's just awful, that's offensive to my intellect. So it's interesting. Picard sucks. Send in a super chat. Are you guys coordinating your comments now? Sends in a super chat and says, Rob, I just got your movie in the mail today. I can't wait to watch it. Well, thank you. It was the work of a lot of people. I was just the producer, but watch the special features too. I mean, the movie, I'm proud of the movie. It is what it is. But as far as direct-to-video horror goes, it's widescreen. I like the way it was made. I like the characters. I like the acting. It's a lot of fun. We did the best we could, but I'm also very proud of the disc as a package. So the special features, I think, are really interesting. George Orwell's Ghost is here. See, I'm more knowledgeable than Nostradamus. Eat shit, Orson Welles. Well, George Orwell's Ghost, I congratulate you. I'm with you there. Robert Pristo sends in a tip and says, hey, Rob, isn't there a movie out this week you want to talk about? Nudge, nudge. My copy is arriving today. Looking forward, and I'll report back. Yeah, it's definitely going to keep you entertained. So I'm curious to hear what you think. And by the way, I very much appreciate that support. Thank you for buying the movie. That's very nice of you. Stubble McShave says, are they going to censor the artwork at the Louvre next? Oh, I'm sure they will. I'm sure they're going to move problematic art into a room because everybody needs to weigh in. I mean, who gets to weigh in? Like, it's such a weird thing to me. Like, my experience, before I went to USC, I went to the Evergreen State College. And the Evergreen State College was a college that had no grades, very crunchy, chewy, granola, hippie, liberal arts college. And I loved it. And you would get into you'd get in these coordinated studies programs. You weren't taking like normal regular classes, and a coordinated studies program would be comprised of multiple classes under the umbrella of something. And my first year there, my coordinated studies program was called The Making of Meaning. And you'd have seminars, and you'd have to do your reading, and you'd sit around, like it'd be 15 students and a professor. Man, and the years that I was at Evergreen, I saw some knockdown, drag-out, screaming matches in seminars. People really got into each other's faces, and there was a lot of differing points of view, but that was part of it. And you got graded, not on your yelling and screaming, but you got graded on your participation in those seminars. And you had to learn. There was all different kinds of people, and Evergreen had a lot of continuing education students, people that came back. There was a wide range. I mean, I was there as an 18-year-old, but there was a wide range of people, a lot of older people. So you really had to learn tolerance. And it was interesting. When I saw what happened at Evergreen in 2017, I saw a lot of these young students full of piss and vinegar taking over the school. And I'm like, shit, man, what a waste of time. You know, not that I think protest is a waste of time, but these kids all want things their way. I want it this way. I want it that way. I mean, you're supposed to go to college thinking you don't know shit. Or maybe you think you know things. When you get to college, the whole point is you know shit. You don't know anything. You don't know anything. And you're supposed to be there for intellectual rigor and examination and learn about the world and learn what you think and figure out what your beliefs are. And I'll tell you, I didn't understand what happened at Evergreen in 2017. It was so weird. Gerald sends in a tip and says, in the movie 1984, Winston Smith, working at the Ministry of Truth, erases unpersons from public photos and changes newspaper stories to fit Big Brother's teachings. When Winston explores subversive ideas, he is renounced and canceled. Sound familiar? Yeah, it does. And you know what? I think a lot of people that are bitching and moaning and complaining and want things canceled don't even know who Winston Smith was. You know, don't even know those lessons. I mean, when I was in school, I was in high school in 1984, and that was a big deal. You know, it was a big deal. And the idea nowadays, college campuses, you'll hear people say freedom of speech is not a good thing. My feelings, the way I feel, trumps history, and it trumps art and all of these things. Somehow my feelings today, me of today, is more important than this kind of stuff. The way I don't understand that at all. You know, one day you're going to be dust and art is still going to be hanging on the walls. Hopefully cinema will still be here too. So your feelings during this time about these things, imagine how would a future civilization feel 100 years from now, 200 years from now, 500 years from now? How would our civilization feel if we knew that when Shakespeare was originally writing his plays that somebody came and burned them all because they found them subversive at the time? Would we be better off as people? I hope that we never have to have a future civilization look back at us and goes, those insane people and their ideas of cancel culture or whatever got rid of so many vibrant works of art because they deemed them unworthy. Who are we to say? Who are we to say? Look, don't destroy things that are problematic. Put them in places where people can discuss them. Get educated about them. Keep that discussion going. Understand why they were problematic and how they came to be. And make sure that we don't have a civilization that ever has those things happen again. But we forget. Kevin the Comic Doctor sends in a tip and says, "Hi, Rob. I can help you out with slabbing your books. It's what I do. I can clean and press them for you and submit on your behalf. Happy to help." Ooh, that's interesting. You should email me. Most of my books are pretty clean. Some of them need to be pressed. Yeah, I don't really know. I'm going to have to send in a few books just to get a sense of, you know, where they're at. I don't want any books that are less than 9.0, but I don't even know if my books are that. They're all pretty clean, though. You know, I think they're pretty clean, but I don't know. That's interesting. How much does that cost? Lamont Smalls is here. Sends in a super chat and says, "Rob, I think the reason Tenet was moved because movie theaters here in NYC won't open till as early as July 20th. Our city has NYC opening movies in Phase 4. We start Phase 2 on Monday, exactly 2 weeks after starting Phase 1. Lamont, I think you're correct about that. I've heard that Warner Brothers would not open Tenet until 80% of the world's movie theaters are open, and in the United States, we had to have the New York and LA markets open before they did that. So I think you're absolutely right about that. We'll see, though. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. Fortunato sends in a tip and says, HBO's Watchmen was prophetic. The Libstapo had the perfect trigger warning. I suspect Lindelof will be getting a lot of ideas. Yeah, the Libstapo. I love that, the Libstapo. You know, I consider myself a liberal, a classical liberal. I don't understand. I mean, liberals are open to new ideas. I don't understand stopping ideas from flowing, even if they're problematic ideas. Like, I just don't get it. I don't understand. Like, why don't people want to discuss? If there's an idea that makes you uncomfortable, why not discuss it? Why does it make you uncomfortable? You know, it's not like these things don't exist. It's so weird. Hey, Midnight's Edge After Dark is here. I'm late. Can you start over? Just kidding. Live long and prosper and hail. Well, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks, by the way, Midnight's Edge, for the lovely shout-out they gave me the other day. That was very nice at the end of one of their videos. Julius Goodwin sends in a super chat and says, have you ever seen Charlie Chaplin's speech in the movie The Great Dictator? It's seriously one of the most powerful, moving moments in cinema, and it's still relevant today. For those of you who have, you know what I can do right now? It's one of the greatest speeches. It's one of the greatest things ever written for a movie. Great speech. And it's one of the greatest things you'll ever see. Now, normally I would play it on the show, but I can't. I don't want to get a copyright strike. But here it is. Here it is. I'm putting it in the live chat. If you've never seen this, you don't necessarily even have to see the whole movie, although you should because it's really great. Here is the speech. Here is the speech that Charlie Chaplin gives at the end of the movie. By the way, I'm just looking at this. Spirit Hunter Bomb says, can I watch the HBO Watchmen without having seen the movie? People have asked that question to me a lot. I think really the series is a sequel to not the movie so much as it is a sequel to the actual graphic novel. I cannot stress enough that the Watchmen graphic novel is one of the great superhero stories of all time. And if you read the graphic novel, and I mean really read it, it's a dense piece of work. Do not give it a cursory glance. Sit down and give it your all. If you read the Watchmen comic and then watch the HBO series, you'll get the most out of it. Because as Lindelof said, it's not really a sequel to the movie. The movie is an adaptation of the comic. Read the comic first. And it is one of the greatest comic books ever written. So, yes, I definitely recommend doing it that way. I really do. Because it's fantastic. Let's see. Eric Gant says, watch out for the Undertoad. Are you talking a little World According to Garp? Because that is a reference, right? Mr. Dumbhuck sends in a tip and says, offended? I'll tell you what you should be offended by. I think swastikas and white hoods should be openly worn. Broads should be grabbed by the tits when you greet them. I don't care. Offended? Ha! I don't give a flying one. I'll educate you. F off. Well, hang on a second. I don't necessarily agree with that either. I mean, the fact is, we live in a civil society. And I think that when we're doing things, that's why it's important, like Confederate monuments, things like that. Put them in a museum. Have a place where you can go and see the Confederate monuments and explain the Confederacy. Have a place where all of those things can be displayed. I don't think that broad should be grabbed by the tits when you greet them, as you say. That's not what people do. And see, there's a difference here. When we're having these conversations, educated civil discourse is what I'm looking for. I know you're being facetious and all that. I get what you're trying to do, and it was funny. But if I say it's funny, someone's going to cancel me. Rob said this was funny. Look, as a Jew, I never, ever, ever, ever want anything that would absolve humanity of the Holocaust. And remember, it wasn't just Jews that were killed. It was 6 million other people as well. And look what happened in Russia as a result. And tens of millions of people died during the Holocaust and during the World War II, during all of it. Not just the Holocaust, but during all of it. And, I mean, what did the Japanese do to the Chinese? The rape of Nanking. There's so much horrific stuff that happened during a short period of time, relatively short period of time, in World War II. Do I want any of those things to go away and not be talked about? No. They all need to be talked about. But we have to talk about them like, humanity did this. We did this to people. You know, we literally did this to people. Just like I think that the slave trade needs to constantly be discussed. All of it. The slave trade isn't just as cut and dried as Americans had slaves. I mean, there was a worldwide slave trade that went along, and there was a lot of people that participated in it. and it needs to be understood, and we never should get rid of that stuff. We have to remember where we've been. And just smashing, I understand smashing things are symbolic. I get it. But I would rather have, and there are always going to be some people that are going to glorify the South because they still have those beliefs. The South, they were treasonous, seditious people that wanted to destroy the United States for a way of life that they didn't want to give up, for mostly economic reasons. I mean, they wanted slaves for economic reasons. They wanted to enslave people so they could make money. I mean, come on, that's pretty bad. Like, I mean, it doesn't get much worse. It's horrific. Enslaving people for economic reasons. And by the way, the North wasn't there was indentured servitude there as well that people don't talk about. I mean, it's not a good look all the way around. But we have to remember all this stuff. We have to talk about it. We have to understand it. It's difficult, but it's tough. It's tough. Let's see, where are we? Alexander Wilson, James Baldwin, who is there's a James Baldwin. I can't even say, can I say it? No, I won't even say the name of it. There's a great James Baldwin documentary that's out. James Baldwin, Zora Neale Hurston, Alice Walker, Ralph Ellison, and Richard Wright have had their art banned for decades. Nobody talks about that. The censorship thing isn't new, and they should not. Oh my God. I mean, man, I read The Invisible Man. That in junior high school, that book blew my mind. Not the new movie. It's different. It's a very different thing. But yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, James Baldwin, the language he used and things like that, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. All of these things need to be available. All of them need to be discussed. They all need to be out there. Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, shouldn't Star Trek Picard have a disclaimer about the portrayal of Raffi? Or are they just going after good movies and TV shows? Yeah, I know, right? I mean, I thought the portrayal of Raffi was pretty racist, to be honest. I mean, I couldn't believe it. That I mean, every cliche, and not only that, they piled one cliche on top of another. She wasn't just a deadbeat mom. Oh, she was a drug addict too. I mean, it's like crazy. Honest Asian Guy sends in a tip and says, "Hi Rob, I recently watched the classic Chinese Western, The Swordsman in Double Flag Town by He Ping, and it was brilliant. Have you seen it? I have not seen it. I don't even know that movie, but now I want to. The Swordsman in the Double Flag Town. Sounds like right up my alley. Thanks and have a good day." I mean, and that's another thing. We want to have these, we censor things, so it's like, which group are we going to talk about? Like this year, who's on top now? Who are we going to censor? I mean, we don't seem to talk about what the Japanese did to the Chinese during World War II. That's something we kind of stay away from. That is that not sexy? Do we not want to talk about that? I mean, which atrocities that mankind committed against their fellow man and fellow woman? Which atrocities did human beings commit against their fellow human beings that we're not going to talk about today, or we're going to talk more about later? I mean, it's so weird. Let's see. Oh, Lancelot Narian sends something to cheer me up. I hope this Lower Deck stuff, when you say cheer me up, I'm going to put it in the live chat. Here we go. I mean, honestly, the Bill and Ted philosophy, be excellent to each other. I think that's good. Well, I haven't seen this, man. I'm gonna look into this. What is these? Let's see what these character designs look like. Oh, I've seen this. Cast and designs unveiled. I've seen that picture though. Yeah. Are you trolling me? Are you trolling me, Lancelot? Yeah, I mean, it's hey, maybe it'll be good. Maybe it'll be good. I don't know. I hope it's good. I want it to be good. Don't you want it to be good? I want it to be good. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, I think that brings me to an end of Robservations number 445. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not quite sure. I think tomorrow night on Whining About Movies, Elizabeth picked another David Fincher movie for romance night. She picked, damn proud of her for this one, Gone Girl. That's right. We already watched Fight Club. She picked Gone Girl for romance night. And I'm like, that's my girl. There's a movie that screams romantic comedy. So tomorrow, romance night. Gone Girl. David Fincher's Gone Girl, an adaptation of Gillian Flynn's book. I loved Gone Girl. I'll tell you right away. I loved it, loved it, loved it. So join us then. And I want to thank everybody that did buy The Hills Run Red. I hope you write me back. And by the way, if you hate the movie, I want to hear your honest opinion. If you don't like the special features, you don't have to, massage my ego. I want to hear what you have to say, because what I have learned as a filmmaker is I don't argue back. I just listen to what people say. Arguing back about your work and trying to convince people of what you're trying to do, that way you'll never win. Never win about that. So anyway, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you for coming to the channel, supporting the channel. If you want to write me letters, please go to the Burnettwork.net website. You can send me videos there. You can send me anything you want, videos, letters, whatever. I will read them on the show. It doesn't cost you anything. You can support me over on Patreon. You can support me there however you want to do it. But send me letters. It's always good to hear from you. I want to thank Mike Bodden. I want to thank Haynock. I want to thank The Richard. I want to thank Greg Smith for being moderators and working on the channel. If you haven't gone to the Facebook page, either for the Post-Geek Singularity or the Whining About Movies Facebook page, The Richard is always doing watch parties and showing interesting things, like all the time. Day or night. I don't even know when he sleeps. It's amazing. I want to thank him for that as well. So I come to an end, and I once again want to thank little Aiden Wallace. And happy Aiden's 9th birthday, Mr. Aiden Wallace. And look at this. Imagination connoisseur in training. So thanks for that, Aiden. Happy birthday. And I hope it's a good one. And I'm sending you a package. Boy, you're not going to know just what kind of 80s comic goodness I'm sending you, but I hope you love it. And that said, ladies and gentlemen, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. Just listen. And with that, I say, as always, have a better day. And come back tomorrow.